Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in the chat. I'm now getting the chat stuff. I wasn't getting it before, so thank you for hopping in. It's good to see everybody. This is episode 118. We have lots to talk about today. I had to change the time of the stream by 30 minutes, so I hope that those of you who saw that post were okay with that. Nora does not have school today. She has a date with her dad tonight, so the preschool is taking all of the kids and the dad's bowling tonight for Father's Day. And they are doing that tonight. So Nora doesn't have school during the day, which is super annoying. And so my mom offered to look after Nora. So I wanted to move the live stream back a little tiny bit so that I would be okay for still getting James picking up Nora because she's at my mom's house. We're going to run into this problem again in June because her very last day of preschool ever, so weird, and her graduation is actually on my birthday on June 14th. And so she's done that day. And then later in that month, we've got a live stream. So my mom offered to look after her that day as well, which is really lovely. So a little bit of juggling childcare. It's so weird to me. I'm going to sort of ramble for just a minute. It's really strange to me. So I've been doing this. We're going to be celebrating our 3-year anniversary in June. That'll be the 3-year Patreon anniversary. And which is just amazing to me. Like, I never thought in a million years that this is what would come out of starting the Patreon account and whatnot. And the really strange part to me is that come August, that's it for trying to like juggle childcare and trying to figure out the live stream around the kids because they're going to be in school. Like, it's so weird. So Nora starts kindergarten in September and James will be going into grade 2. And yeah, a lot of changes coming in September. So it's weird to me that we're down to the last 3 months of me having to like schedule the live stream around not only preschool, but when Nora's not in school, what do I do with Nora so that I can do the show? So lots of changes coming. All right. So good to see you guys all. I am graduating. Diane says, you're graduating. I'm totally graduating. We're graduating to the next season of life. So really exciting stuff. I had mentioned in the Slack channel a while ago, it was back in, I think it must have been April, because my parents were in Japan at the time, and so a friend of mine helped us out with childcare. I had mentioned in the Slack channel, I had popped in really quickly and I had taken a photo because I had found a hole in one of my most favorite hand spun shawls. So some of you will remember this because you were on Slack that day and you were like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I found this hole. So I still need to fix it. I just haven't used the shawl since then because we've had this warm snap of weather. And I said in the comment about the hole in my shawl, but that there was nothing I could do about it because I was walking into a job interview. And I was a little bit cryptic about it because I didn't really want to say too much and I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm doing this and I've got this job interview, because I wasn't really sure where the job interview would go and how it would go because it's a complete and total pivot from what I'm doing right now. So as many of you know, my sort of day job, if you will, and I sort of use that loosely because the woolen spinning stuff and my day job has sort of become quite equal in the amount of time that I spend on both. Anyhow, long story short, my day job, I have sort of been trying to figure out what I'm going to do long term, and I've been working in trauma for over 16 years and just feeling really burned out and really not sure what to do. Lots of sort of conversations and lots of sort of trying to figure it out. My 2 best friends have been just amazing about listening to me and sort of trying to mull over sort of what to do and what not to do. And they really understand because they're nurses as well. They work in trauma as well. And they, one has just recently, a year ago, she left because she just was ready to do other things. And long story short, really, really super supportive. But I have been trying to figure out for quite a long time about what I was going to do. So I applied for this job and I got it. So I found out a week ago that I actually was selected and was offered the job. It's just a casual position, but I'm working casual in my other job right now. And it's actually a palliative care position. So I'm going to be, my master's is in palliative care and in end of life. And I was offered it. So I wanted to share that with you guys because it does mean some big changes for the fall. The job, the position will be a very different type of work. And the reason for making the shift and the change is because I would eventually like to move into some sort of a leadership position in palliative care. It's always been my goal, my long-term goal. And it actually will free me up to do more of this stuff. So that maybe doesn't make sense, but I find my current position is so draining on me emotionally and physically. The hours are long, our nights shifts, there's absolutely no breaks. So you're up for, X number of 24 hours plus, and it leaves me so drained and so just takes me a while to recover. And I'm not loving the work anymore. So I thought, you know what? It's time to shift gears and free myself up emotionally and physically to be able to not only do my nursing, but also do woolen spinning and to treat them as equals. So that's the big change that's coming. So anyhow, it is a really special area. You're right, Sarah. And 60%, I think it would really surprise people. 60% of critical care, especially in big trauma centers, is end of life. We do over 60% of our patients are end of life during their critical illness evolution, whether it's on their first admission or on subsequent admissions. So 60% of our patients leave our care as end-of-life patients, whether they have an opportunity to go to palliative care or because they die within our unit with us facilitating that. So to be able to do that part of the care and do it really well and in a way that I want to be able to do it means that I need to move to palliative care. So anyhow, total sidestep, but I wanted to let you guys know because it means some changes for woolen spinning that are coming, because it means that I can treat the two as equals. I can have my career in my nursing and I can do woolen spinning, and I think that's really important to let you guys know, because woolen spinning sort of up to this point has been something that I sort of fit in, and I want to do it, but I have to fit it in with all these other hats that I wear, and now all of a sudden I have an opportunity to make it an equal priority. So all right, let's get into the show. I will put a timestamp for those who don't care about the preamble, so that you guys know where to kind of hop into the show where we get into like the real spinning and stuff. I wanted to share a couple of things before we move the camera around. Thank you so much to all of you who are saying congratulations. Thank you to San and Erica and Diane and Florence, you guys, and Eve. I really appreciate your guys' support. You guys are the reason why I want to do all of this. So without getting too sappy, I really appreciate it. On Instagram, we're going to totally shift now. On Instagram, I kept coming across #BurnsideBibs. And this is not my style at all. Like, if you know me in real life, you'll be like, really? Because it's not what I wear at all. But they kept coming across my feed, and I finally just hit follow on the hashtag. You know how you can follow hashtags on Instagram now? And I just love them so much. And there's different cuts, and there's different sort of variations on the pattern, but it's basically a jumper. They're sort of like overalls, and the ties come up like overalls, but then at the back as you can see, I'll just put it up a little bit closer so that you guys can really see. You see how at the back here they sort of tie, and then what I've noticed people have been doing on Instagram is they bring that tie around to the front and they tie it in the front, and it's just, to be honest with you, it's just really, really cute. Sorry for the reflection of the plastic. I'm not ready to take the pattern out yet. The reason why I didn't get the PDF and I bought the actual physical pattern from Sew House 7, they're based in the UK, is because our printer has been really hit and miss. And I just thought, I'm going to get the paper pattern. There's a couple of PDF only download patterns that I really want to make. So I thought, well, I can play around with those and see if I can get the printer working for those. And then if I can get paper patterns, I'll buy the paper patterns. But I've got some fabric some linen fabric that's a little bit heavier weight. It's not super heavy, but it's a little bit heavier than what you would want for like a woven shirt. And I thought that it would be perfect to use for this. It's sort of a dark charcoal linen. So I'm really excited about these. I'm hoping that I can make them in June, but I don't know. I've got orientation shifts, and I also have, and then we're leaving for our trip. So I'm not totally sure, but there's 2 versions, and I'm thinking I'm going to make cropped ones, but version 2, the pant leg isn't quite so wide because my build, I don't look great in really wide legged pants, even though I know that's really kind of that style is coming. But it's just, they're not quite as bulky. So I think with version 2, you use your hip measurement to determine your size, unless your waist is larger than your hips, and then you use your waist measurement. But version 2 has a looser back pant that slips over your hips and does not have a closure to sew. Yeah. Anyhow, I'm gonna look at the pattern some more, but I was just really excited about this because I kept stumbling across it, and one of the things I talked about this on the podcast a long time ago, so you may or may not remember. One of my goals when Nora goes to kindergarten was to start sewing more, and there's some really great sewing Instagram accounts that people are really looking at this whole idea of a handmade wardrobe and sustainability in our making, and there's this whole idea of only having, I think it's like 7 or 9 pieces of fabric at any given time to work from. And it kind of got me thinking about spinning fiber, but I'm not quite ready to commit to that yet because I'm nowhere near nine things of spinning fiber. But anyways, it did get me thinking about this whole idea of like creativity and using our stash and minimalism and all that different stuff. Anyways, I sort of thought that I would start with something like this because I think from just a utilitarian perspective, these will be really useful, particularly when we're camping, washability, all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to share that with you. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is a Rug Weaver source book. So this, my friend Kelsey lent to me, and I have been thinking really seriously about wanting to, when I get my loom eventually, probably in August sometime, I really wanted to look into weaving some rugs for in our house because we have nowhere. We used to have rugs to ground some of our rooms, but the dogs ruined them. The kids were little, stuff got spilled, and over time they sort of got moved along. And so Kelsey lent this to me, and I'm going to actually take it on our trip and look through it. I may not like read it cover to cover, but I am going to have a really good look at it. So I thought I would share that with you guys. I have no idea where it's from or where to get it. It's not a new book. It was a thrifted book, and she paid $3. So I'll look at the dates for publishing, because this is not a new book. It's an interweave book from 1984. I love that with weaving and spinning and knitting and everything, this is not outdated. Like, it's still very current and very timely, which is just amazing. Like, look at this. Isn't that amazing? Let me get my camera right. Isn't that incredible? Oh, so cool. So, anyhow. Oh, that's awesome. Sarah just inherited her grandma's sewing machine, so we can start our sewing adventure together. Yes. So I have my mom's old sewing machine from the early 80s. It's a Pfaff. It's just amazing. It's just a total workout horse. And then I go over to my mom's house if I want to do any like really specific fine sewing, like, you know, really, really precise top stitching or anything like that, because she has a Husqvarna that's just, it's just a really nice machine. My mom's a beautiful sewer and seamstress sewer. She doesn't make clothes anymore, but she's a beautiful quilter. And I go over and use her machine for like any really, you know, fiddly work. And then I think I mentioned on the last show that my mom is her plan for my birthday, which is really kind because we don't usually do much for birthdays, is to give me her serger. She's gonna get it all, you know, fixed up again because it's not working currently. So I'm excited. All this stuff, all this modern sewing, it's all serged, and it does make it a lot faster, let's face it. I've used a serger a lot over the years, and I do enjoy the speed. All right, let me look at my notes here. I have a few things. Unbraided is available as an ongoing sort of available book, if you will. Katrina has everything running in her shop, so craftyjacks.ca if you would like a hard copy of the book. I don't mean hard-sided, I mean like a physical copy of the book. It's a soft cover book. And if you would prefer an ebook, you can go to Blurb. I've got all the links in the show notes, which are available at patreon.com/wellforpearls or at wellforpearls.com. So thank you so much to everybody who has already ordered a copy. Your support means a lot. So thank you so much. Okay, let's talk about braiding color studies. I'm going to use my swanky new, I'm going to use my swanky new, I've got new streaming software. So I'm going to switch things over, and we were playing with this, like I mentioned when we set everything up, and it transitions. I'll do it right now and you guys will see. And Mike and I were both like, oh, this is awesome. So let me just move things around because I forgot to adjust this. And you guys will see how amazing this is. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, I just did it in real time and nothing skipped or jumped or did anything. It didn't stop working. Oh, the little things. The little things. All right, so we've got Megan's stuff here. Likey Meg on Ravelry. She's got her finished art bat. So she spun all of her yarn. Isn't that amazing? Her yarn is amazing. And she spun it woolen on her Lendrum at 10-1, and then she made she two-plied it. This is In's stuff. Her plan was to spin singles for both 2 and 3-ply light and dark yarn for a mini study. So she mentions that there won't be enough to do a project, but she wonders if she'll be able to combine the yarns into something. But I wonder if she can combine the yarns into something. So this is one of Megan's samples that she did a bit of weaving with. I just think her swatches are amazing. And then this is In's stuff, so A. Dawson. This is her spinning on her Lendrum as well. And this is all of her yarns. So on the very far side is the 2-ply light, 3-ply light, and then the middle is a mixture of both, which I thought was really cool. She did a 2-ply. And those are the bats that Meg did. I love the diversity. So one of the things that I've been finding with the Breed and Color Studies this time round is just the diversity in all of the projects has just been amazing so far. The other thing that I wanted to say is that, and I think you guys will really understand, is that just the sheer, like last time round, everybody was sharing all of their projects and they, it sort of got going with the Massim sort of over the period of a little while. But I feel like this study, people just dove right in. So once they got their fiber, they just started spinning right away. Not everybody, because I know there's, some people take a little bit longer and they want to think about what they're going to do. They want to see what others are creating, which is totally normal. But I just love that there are people that, that you guys really dove in quickly. You got going with it. Those who are spinning some other projects, you had it all ready to go and you just kind of jumped in with 2 feet. And I just think that is so cool. That's the whole point of these studies, right? Is to share our progression with this stuff and to grow as spinners and to grow as makers and to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone. That's the whole point of Breed and Color Studies. I know there are people in the group who've already spun Dorset before, so they were kind of ready to jump in right away. And then there were others who were sort of happy to, take a slower approach and sort of, do a little bit of sampling, see how it goes. One of the things that I found when I was spinning is just how smooth the fiber drafted. Like it just was so smooth, and it spun really evenly and very finely, which I have found with Dorset before. It tends to spin very fine. And I just think that is so cool. And then look with in stuff, look at how much it poofed up. You know, those fine singles under tension like that on the wheel. And then, you know, you go to wash and finish it and it just goes, you know, it's unbelievable. All right. Oh, Eve, great question about the book. So is there a coupon code or a download link for the ebook if you buy a hard copy? If you connect with Katrina and email her your receipt for the ebook, she will adjust everything for you. So you just need to get in touch with Katrina and she will adjust it all for you. We do have a combined price for the two. So yes, Eve, that is an option. Oh, such a great improvement in video quality. That's great. Oh, thanks, Becca. Oh, I'm glad you guys you're already noticing. That's wonderful. Because Mike and I weren't sure, you know, like at our end, it looks really crisp and looks really good. There's a couple of things over time that I want to improve, and you know, you can always buy more camera equipment. You can always buy more and get more expensive stuff. But it's nice to know where you're headed and what you would like to do eventually. But in the meantime, you know, I want to, you know, maximize the quality as much as possible. So especially in the live stream, because sometimes the live stream can get quite grainy when I'm switching camera views all the time. All right. Megan, superstar, totally, Florence. Let me just catch up with chat. You guys are always so amazing in there. All right. I'm knitting my fiber right now. Okay, so Megan is actually knitting with this right now. So she did her little swatches and now she's actually knitting with all of her yarns. So she said that she's gonna post photos soon. So maybe I'll have those for you for a future episode. So that's awesome. Anyway, so thank you to everybody who's participating in Bringing Color Studies so far. I really appreciate it. You guys are so amazing. All right, look at this transition. Isn't that amazing? It just goes. All right, let's talk about some works in progress. So last time I had mentioned about that yarn that I was spinning that was the Lava Love from, it was on Katrina's, one of Katrina's bases. If I throw this on the floor, I'm not gonna be able to reach it later and I'm gonna need it. So I'm not gonna throw it on the floor. She had spun, or she had I had bought from her, the Panda, and I ended up spinning up a 3-ply crepe yarn. So this is like a really terrible center pull ball because I am in the middle of knitting these socks. I'm hoping, but I might not be able to, finish the second sock this weekend. So I haven't actually started it yet, but it's only Wednesday today, and I'm hoping that I can knit up the second sock sort of as quickly as possible. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but I've got this much yarn left and the first sock is actually done. So let's just talk about these colors for a minute because they are amazing. This was Lava Love, and the Panda base is a superwash merino bamboo nylon. It's 60-30-10. So 10% nylon, 30% bamboo, and 60% superwash merino. The video color seems more accurate in this new space. Oh, thank you, Judy. That's really good feedback. Thank you. Because yeah, that's one of the things that Mike and I were wanting and we're looking for is a more accurate color reading. So we adjusted on a whole bunch of stuff. The other thing that we adjusted that I think a couple people will be really happy about, I hope, is the sound. And there was a few other things that we adjusted. So I'm just really hoping that you guys, that it works. Like all these little changes that we make, it just slowly improves the quality of the podcast slowly over time. And that's the goal, right? Like, you know, there's a lot going on when you're live streaming. It's not as straightforward as a lot of people sort of think that it is. And it's a privilege to be able to do this with you guys and to be able to share this way with you guys. So we're just sort of slowly over time just making, you know, more improvements. So I'm glad. Thank you. This is the fiber. So for those who have never spun bamboo before and are totally new to spinning, bamboo doesn't take the acid dyes at all. So acid dyes adhere to protein fibers, and bamboo is a cellulose fiber. So you'll notice that all of this white in here, that's all the bamboo fiber. So what you end up with when you spin a Panda type blend that has bamboo in it, often people call superwash merino, bamboo, nylon, that blend is often sort of referred to as Panda. The white that's in there ends up sort of muting or toning down those colors. Likewise, if you had black in there, like black alpaca, so let's say this was a merino black alpaca blend and those strips of white that are in there were black, these colors, rather than becoming more pastel, would become darker and moodier. So just like in our breeding color studies where we're looking at roe legs with white and roe legs with black, you've got the same thing happening. You've got, if that white was actually black, you'd have a more moody color and a more a darker tone overall to the yarn. And because this is bamboo and it's the white, you've got a more pastel, and it mutes down the colors into these pastels. Now, because these colors are so bright, and because of Katrina's knowledge around color and how white and black and brown and gray all affect the colors that are on the fiber, she knows that if she leaves these really super, super, super bright, and some people would even say a bit garish, she knows that that's going to compensate for when that white blends and spins into the yarn, and you end up with this really gorgeous, yarn. Now, this is a traditional 3-ply in the sense that I manage the colors. It's a crepe yarn, but I manage the colors in the sense that I stripped this down into 3. So I stripped it, and I stripped it, and each of these strips I spun end to end, and then I just plied. So it's a little bit more complicated than that, only because 2 of those got 2-plied to make the crepe yarn. So they ended up spinning with the 3rd single. In the traditional 3-ply, you have the 3 singles plying together. But with the crepe yarn, because you have a second step in there, so you spin all your singles and then you ply 2 of those singles together, and then you counter ply the remaining single with that 2-ply, and it almost sort of creates this like wrap effect. Let me just see if I can show it to you on my hand. I'll show you a close-up with the cameras. So it almost sort of creates like a wrapping effect around the yarn, around the 2-ply yarn. It reversed the colors. So 2 of the singles ended up in one direction, and the other 2 and the other one ended up in the opposite direction. So it kind of almost ended up reversing the colors. So the funny thing is when you look at the sock, this is why it's so cool and why I'm telling you all of this, is because, let me put it up like this, and then you guys can see this down here. Learning new cameras, it's interesting. So you see how, what would have happened with the traditional 3-ply is the colors would have moved from the red to the yellows and oranges, because the red and the yellow drafts together, and then it would have moved to like a greeny color in here. And then it would have moved up into the purple and the blue, because that's the sequence of the dye sequence, right? Like you've got purple, blue, light blue. You've got red, yellowy, orange, because of where the colors combined. And then you've got yellow, and then you've got red again, purple, blue, right? So if the yarns had all been plied together all in a traditional 3-ply from one end to the other and just plied, the colors would have moved exactly that way through the knitted sock, right? Because one of those 3 singles was reversed, I ended up with this heathering. So the blue ended up plying with some of the yellow, the purple and the light blue ended up plying with some of the red. So I always had 2 singles that were mostly the same, other than in these like really short color transitions. And then I had a 3rd single that was always completely different, because I was basically spinning. It's basically like plying a center pull ball, right? Because you're reversing the colors on top of each other. So this is kind of what I ended up with. So 2 of the singles were spun like this, right? And then because one of the singles, the third one, was reversed, it was like this. And that's what ended up happening. And that's why the finished yarn ends up looking like this. Does that make sense? So if I had wanted to alleviate that and get rid of that and had them all work up all as one color and tried to alleviate some of this blending and heathering in here with the third single being reversed, what I actually could have done, and I actually wish I had done this because it's superwash, and so when I was knitting with it, I think the 2-ply could have been twisted and tightened up a little bit. I think I could have very easily thrown that through my wheel one more time to just tighten it up even that little bit more. I could have done just that. So taken the bobbin of the 2-ply off, put it back on my Lazy Kate, and thrown it back through the wheel one more time to reverse the order of the color, so that then when I went to crepe the yarn, everything would have been going in the same direction. Does that make sense? So let me just check with chat, because you guys are so great about telling me whether what I'm explaining makes sense or not. I don't need any more socks, but how can I resist? It's so true, Florence. I know these projects, they're so inspirational. Like, you know, you go on Instagram, you go on Ravelry, and, you know, rather than sort of like trying to keep up with the Joneses all the time and looking at all this perfect stuff that we see online, I kind of look at it more as like trying to like look at sort of things that people are sharing from a inspiration perspective. So like textures that people are sharing, or yarns that they've made that they're sharing, or like sort of more of a like inspiration, right? Not because I'm trying to keep up, and because it's so easy. And yeah, you just end up making stuff because you're so inspired by what other people are doing. All right, so it sounds like it makes sense. You guys are with me. That sounds like fun. I'd love to find an undyed humbug blend and play with the dye pots. Yeah, wouldn't that be amazing? What is a humbug blend, Eve, for those who don't know? So if all 3 plies were going the same way, the socks would have stripes. That's right. So what is so interesting, Eve just made that connection. So the interesting thing about these is if you look really closely, they do stripe. It's just very subtle. So we're going to talk later in the show in our spinning growth segment about that. And, you know, these still do stripe. I mean, they go from red to yellow, which is sort of a green from a distance because there's the blue in there. So there's that optical mixing. Your eye mixes those colors. And then in here, there's the sort of orangey red from where the yellow and the red transitioned in the braid. But then I've got the light blue, which is this color that I just absolutely love this color. It's kind of a bit of a like a denim or an indigo type color, where that plied with the yarn. And then this should have been purple, which it is. 2 of the singles are purple, but then there's the red in there. And then you go into this sort of purpley blue, which is reading for you guys as this blue in here. Let me just move things. It's reading as this color in here, which was this sort of slightly darker blue, this sort of navy blue in here. But it's actually purple in real life because there's red in there. And then it goes up again. So like these are stripes, which is so interesting. And this in here would have been much more pronounced and much more like this area of the sock, but dun, 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 the heel is there. So that yarn, that stripe got used up in the heel. And that's why there's only this little bit here. I can show you guys that a little bit more clearly by putting it on a sock blocker. So just give me 2 seconds. I love how our little discussions like turn into these massive discussions, and it's part of the reason why I never get through everything that I want to get through in one show, and I have to carry stuff through to the next show. You guys are just so amazing. So yeah, you see how that stripe that would have been in here gets used up in the heel, because this is the Fish Lips Kiss heel pattern that I always use. I do that to keep all of my socks the same. So because I'm knitting samples to show you guys how colors work up, how yarns work up, about yarn structure, I have stuck with the same pattern for all of these socks. Like I've knit this pattern now, I think like, it's something ridiculous, like 40 times. And the reason why I do that is so that they're all vanilla, which means there's no patterning on the body of the sock, the foot or the leg. There's only that little bit of ribbing at the top, and then it all has that short row heel to show you how those colors get sort of used in that short row heel. Because I know like you could have done like an afterthought heel in here so that the striping would have continued up through here and then continued on. But for me, knitting samples, it's easier for me to throw in the heel and have it done so that when I cast off at the top, they're just done. The heather is stunning. I have to admit, I like this. I'm not sure that I would have. Okay, full disclosure. I am going to knit the second pair. Or sorry, if I can't get the whole sock out of this second skein of yarn, when I go to spin this up to finish this spin, I am going to do what I just said about reversing the 2-ply back through the wheel. So I'll be plying from the right end. And hopefully in the winter, we will have 2 pairs of socks to compare, making sure that the colors are going in the same direction versus this where you've got one singles where the yarn is going in the opposite direction. I can't believe how much fun socks are. Isn't that the truth, Charlotte? It's so true. Fan of heathering. I'll stick a link in the Slack chat. Okay. You can also rewind one of the bobbins onto a new bobbin, so you're starting at the same end. Yeah, so the only reason why I thought that reversing the 2-ply would be the easiest is because I wish that there had been a little bit more twist in that yarn anyways. So to tighten up that ply twist in that 2-ply yarn to really make that crepe yarn really pop, throwing that 2-ply back through the wheel would have been really helpful. So yeah, you could totally rewind your third single, the one that's spun in the opposite direction. You could totally rewind that onto another bobbin and then crepe them together. It would just, for me, it made the most sense to tighten up the 2-ply to make it really pop. All right. Yeah, Florence. So Florence is offering to knit the second pair for me. I could totally send you the yarn and just get you to knit them up for me. All right. Can we have another close-up of the yarn, please? Absolutely. So this is a close-up of the yarn. Let's wait for the camera to focus there. Good. It did focus, and now it's not focusing. Here, I'll put it up here. So this is the yarn. Isn't that gorgeous? It's funny because my mom doesn't tend to comment a lot on the yarns that I make. And she saw this in my knitting bag. I was just finishing up this yesterday, actually. My dad had a specialist appointment, and I took him, and she saw me knitting on it when we got home because you're having tea and just filling my mom in on what had been discussed. And it's all good. Don't worry. My dad's not sick. And my mom was like, "Oh, that's just beautiful." And she doesn't usually comment on, because I'm always working on something for the show. So anyhow, let's move on. If you guys are curious about all of these different sock structures that we've been talking about a lot on the show, all of this stuff is talked about in a lot more detail on the How I Spin vlog and the How I Spin PDF download each month. And I can link to that stuff down below so that you can find it on Patreon, because all of this stuff goes into a lot more detail off air in the vlog, which is recorded in a video format just like this, and in the PDF download. So I'll link to that stuff below, because I know there's a lot of questions around like structure and how to make some of these yarns and whatnot, and I go over a lot of that stuff in that content. Okay, I just have to find them. Here they are. Okay, this is Swellsdale, and it is chocolate block full of Kemp. So I spun this up really quickly at the beginning of the month. I keep forgetting to share it on the show. It's not a particularly nice yarn. There are massive pieces of Kemp coming out of it. I'll show you here. It's just like flaking off. I can just, like, you can see it in there, all that Kemp in there. It's just totally Kempy. It does have a nice sort of, because it's not pure white, there are some really nice heathered kind of areas to it. The singles aren't super consistent because it was difficult to spin it really consistently because of all of the Kemp and just the way that it was prepped. It's not terrible. I think it's just the nature of the fiber. I got this eons ago from the basement of Romney Wools in Toronto. So if anybody's been in the basement of Romney Wools, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was like buried down there, and I think it was like $5 for a half-pound bag. So I do have more of this to spin up. And what my plan is to actually spin it up, continue spinning sort of these thick and thin singles, because they can't be super consistent because of the nature of just all of the Kemp and the fiber in there. And it's just, you know, it's not beautifully prepped fiber. I'm going to put a little bit more twist into this. So I'm going to throw that through the wheel, and then I'm going to spin the rest of the singles a little bit higher twist, which we'll talk about in a minute with the Katrina's Fiber Club for this month. And I think I'm going to weave a big sort of white stole shawl thing. I'm hoping I can get it done on the Louette Jane, on the table loom that I'm borrowing right now, because it's kind of the right size to be able to do something sort of about, I don't know, 12, 15 inches wide, and then throw it in the guild sale for our guild that happens in November every year. So yeah, it's just kind of an interesting yarn. It's not like anything really super special, but I wanted to share it. Spinning singles is one of my favorite things to do. It's interesting though. This is not a great prepped yarn. Like, it's not like the fiber preparation's not awesome. But take a yarn, or a fiber, sorry, that is beautifully prepped, and this is what you end up with. Like, look at the difference. Sorry, the cameras are going to have some problems with these colors, but look at the difference. Like, these singles are even, they're nicely twisted. I did full this yarn. So this is the Charollais that was the Crafty Jacks Fiber Club from this year, from this month. And it was a bat. I showed it on the show. Can you believe I never took a photo of the bat? I just started spinning it. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. I always take a picture of the fiber before I spin it, and I don't have any photos of the bat of this, which is, I showed it on the show, but it's nice to have that documentation. Anyways, it was this sort of seafoam green all the way through to this sort of coral, tawny kind of pinky brown color. And I stripped the bat down. I think I shared this on the show. I had some of it in nests, I think. And maybe my memory is not serving and I didn't actually get a chance to talk about it on the show. I can't actually remember, to be honest. And I just spun singles because Eve had said that she had had such good results from this particular fiber spun as singles that I decided in the end not to chain ply it. That was my original plan. So the singles have quite a bit more twist in them than I normally would put in singles, but it was because I was going to chain ply them. So in the end, I've ended up with this great yarn that's a little bit higher twist, but it still hangs beautifully. All that extra twist, it dissolved in the water and dissipated. There's still a little bit of crimp in the yarn. Like you can see in here, there's a little bit of crimp and twist, but nothing to write home about. And it would knit out. I mean, that would just be, and I've ended up with this gorgeous gradient. So there is a part in the yarn where it transitions from the seafoam to the tawny kind of corally pinky color. And oh, it's just so pretty, so pretty. So I love how this yarn turned out. I'm not sure what my long-term plan will be. I don't know if I'm going to weave with it or I fold it. I've kind of gotten out of the habit of felting and fulling my yarns. I've talked about that on the show before. I was finding that there just was no elasticity and no memory to them, and they were getting, like, I just wasn't enjoying working with them quite as much. But I decided to do that with this yarn. So I filled up a really hot basin of water. We have a double sink. I filled up one side with really hot water and I added some eucalyptus to it. And then on the other side, I put cold water, just tap temperatures. And I soaked this in the hot water for a little bit. And then I wrung it out in my hand, squished out as much of the water as I could. And then I put it into the cold and I went back and forth like that, probably a dozen times. And just mostly because I was having a lot of fun, to be honest. It wasn't because it needed to be done that many times. And then I ended up in the end leaving it in the hot water with the eucalyptus. I just kind of left it to soak. And to be honest with you, there was so much going on that I just sort of forgot about it. And then I pulled it out, towel dried it, hung it up, and this is what I ended up with. So I think it's going to be quite lovely. It must have been Becca Yeah, because Becca said, yes, I love my Charollais singles. So it must not be, it must have been Becca. I had you guys mixed up. Sorry, Eve. Eve said that she did socks with hers. So that's, yeah, this is lovely fiber. It's very downy feeling. It's classified as a medium wool, but it's got a very like downy, springy kind of feel to it. And when I was spinning it, it felt very much like the Dorset. But it's soft. Like some people wouldn't want this next to their skin, but honestly, like this would be amazing for a sweater. Amazing. Like a cardigan where your sleeves are touching your skin. This would just be amazing yarn. So I'm excited to work with this some more, actually, to be honest. I'd really like to work with some more of this in the future. So I'm shaking the camera, sorry. So yeah. There's one more Fiber Club from Katrina before it's discontinued. So June will be the last month for Fiber Club. She's got some other stuff that she's working on in the background. And I'm excited to spin that for her and to do that. And then that'll finish off these sort of 6 months of Fiber Club for this first part of the year before she's finished up with Fiber Club for good. So, all right. I've created this whole pile next to me now. I've got like this pile of stuff from the show. I wanted to share for those who are local, if you're not on the MyWa mailing list, I would highly recommend that you get on there. I'm on the list because I've taken a couple of workshops from them over the years. The reason why I love getting these from MyWa, and they come out, I think I get them in the mail at least twice a year, but maybe 3 or 4 times a year. Their books, like they're the same quality as like what Katrina and I just published for our book. They're just the quality is amazing, but it's the photography inside. I find their books are so inspirational, and it covers all of the workshops that are up and coming, and there's a couple of articles usually, and it's got the dates and the locations and about the different workshops, but the photography in these is just amazing. I find them really, really inspirational, and I keep them. Yeah, I just love these. So if you guys aren't on the MyWa mailing list and you're local-ish, I would highly recommend that you get on their mailing list for all of their symposiums. This is for their symposiums. So they have lecture series and symposiums that happen 4 times a year. And so this one is for September, October, November, for the fall 2019 workshops. And yeah, if you aren't on their mailing list, get on their mailing list, because these are gorgeous. And just from like a purely inspirational standpoint, I'm pretty sure it's Tracy, but if it's not, many apologies. If you can message me if I'm calling you by the wrong first name, then I know, then I can correct it. All right. Okay, this yarn is gorgeous, but this is what she writes in the Spinning Growth thread. Spinning Growth comes from Ravelry. There's an ongoing thread in there. People can share their projects that didn't quite go to plan. This is not an opportunity to criticize or to diss on each other or to complain and just really download on each other. This is an opportunity to grow and to recognize that we maybe can't do something quite yet, or we haven't gotten to the results that we want quite yet, but we will get there. And these are the things that we can do to think about next time to be able to attain some of those results. So one of the things, so I gotta fix my screen. Just want it perfect. All right, so what she says is, just finished my first sock spin, and although I'm very happy with the spinning and consistency of the plied yarn, the color is lackluster. It was such a lovely colored braid with 5 to 6 inch plus sections of color, and I divided evenly into thirds, even used my scale for each ply. Each third was divided into quarters and spun starting at the same end. I was hoping that the colors would match up better than they did. The resulting yarn is overall rusty orange, still pretty, but the nice teal is lost. So if you notice in the photo with the wheel, Next to it is the stripped fiber, and there's that gorgeous teal in there. That's what she feels that she's lost. As I was spinning, because the BFL staple length is so long, there was some mixing as I was drafting, which muted the singles somewhat. So she already had some muting before she even plied, because the colors on the staples of the fiber were blending with one another, because they were drafting over one another. So the colors were sliding over one another and creating a little bit of heathering in the singles already before she even got to the plying part. I'm pretty certain that I would have ended up with the yarn I wanted if I had spun the thirds in without further stripping them down. Much more likely that the colors would match. Pulling off chunks of each individual color and spinning that from that instead of pulling off chunks of each individual color and spinning from that instead of down the whole braid would probably have helped too. Well, oh well, live and learn. Okay, so this is really great. This is something I think that we have all experienced. I think this is something that we have all felt in our spinning. You know, we look at this stuff and we sort of think, you know, the finished yarn, and we sort of go, like I lost that jewel in those jewel tones and those bright colors in that original fiber. You know, we just talked about that in my socks. You know, that reversed ply, that one single that was spun in the opposite direction because of that extra step in the middle, created areas where there was that heathering and that blending, and you lose some of that vibrancy. It's like when with the bamboo, the white takes away from some of that vibrancy in the original fiber. If that white was black instead, again, it would take away some of that vibrancy and tone it down. It would make it a darker tone. With the white, it makes it brighter. In this case, you've got color that's quite bright on its own. I mean, that red is quite bright. And that teal, even though it sort of has a bit of a gray undertone, is still a jewel. It's sort of still a more jewel, more vibrant tone. And then you put that with the red. Teal is made up of green. Is basically green. It's made up of blue and yellow. Less yellow than blue, but you've still got blue and yellow in there. And when you put that with red, you now have all three primary colors in that section of yarn. What do all of the primary colors make when they're mixed together? They make brown. So that's why you get that toned down, muted, almost kind of muddy appearance. So there's a few things that she could have done. And I wanted to share some examples from the book, because I have all the samples now. Florence has a really good point. It would be she'd be really interested to see how this knits. I want to see as well, and I hope that you will, because it's a gorgeous yarn. It's so consistent, and the twist is lovely. It's got a lovely sheen to it. So I really hope that you knit with it. All right, so this was some fiber from Fat Cat Knits. And we're going to take out these yarns. We're not going to look at that one. We're going to look at the 3-ply yarns. So it's a traditional 2-ply, traditional 3-ply, chain ply. All right. So when we're looking at how to spin some of these fibers, when you look at the yarns, this one here is a traditional 3-ply. So if you look at this yarn, this was some fiber that was dyed by Fat Cat Knits. It was her colorway Sushi that is unfortunately no longer available because she's not dyeing anymore. But notice in the skein and in the yarn, there's these areas where the yarn heathers and the singles are applied together, either because it's in a color transition area or because the singles all spin up over top of one another. They ply up, so the 3 singles, not everything is spun necessarily 100% evenly, and so it spins up in places where that yarn ends up plying together. Now in contrast, if you want to keep those colors completely clean and you don't want any color twisting and color mixing at all, you really have to chain ply. It's really your only option. And so this same yarn, this is a 3-ply, this is a chain ply. They're both 3-ply, but this is a traditional 3-ply, and this is a chain ply. And look at how much cleaner those yarns are. this yarn. The colors are much cleaner, right? And you preserve that bright green in there. There's no muting like there is in this skein. And it's hard to see because these are just like little samples. But when you look at the knitted swatches, that's where it's really obvious. So this is the 3-ply knitted swatch. That's the traditional 3-ply. And you see how there's all that marling in there, all that heathering and blending all through here with that green, and it's actually a really light tawny pink. But then look at the chain ply. Talk about different. So this is the chain ply and this is the traditional 3-ply. It's pretty different, hey? Like this, the colors are totally and completely clean. So if you want to preserve that teal in there and that really bright red, the only option really is to chain ply. The other thing you could do, and this was why I wanted to pull out these samples, is because you could do a 3-ply fractal. So a 3-ply fractal would still create some striping, but notice how the colors transition up to each other, and you have places where the colors match and where they match up, and then you have places where they kind of heather because you're running through all of the striping, and then you have places where they match up again. So this is the fractal, and again, yes, there's a lot of marling and there's a lot of color twisting in there, but again, you have places where the colors will match up because the striping in those fractions matches up. So in a fractal, you have one strip of fiber that's just left intact and you spin it end to end, and then the other two are stripped down in different amounts. So the second single you might be stripped down 2 or 3 times, and then the final one you strip down maybe 12 or 16 times, and you end up with this transition through all of the striping of all of the fiber. And so if you want to preserve some of the clean color, you could do a 3-ply fractal, have those short sections where the colors are cleaner, but also have some marling and color twisting and blending and heathering to showcase just beautiful fiber and gorgeous colors that really work well together. Becca says that book is going to keep on giving as a teaching tool. You will probably bring out those samples again and again. You know, it's funny that you would say that because I've been working on some stuff behind the scenes, and I was sort of being a little bit cryptic and not talking about a lot of it because I wasn't too sure sort of what it would look like and how it would roll out. But I got the go-ahead to be able to share some of this stuff, and I've been filming some workshops for the School of Sweet Georgia, and they'll be available later in the summer, and I'll let you guys know as soon as they're released for those who are interested. And I'll have some affiliate links to share with you guys that you can click through, and because that's how the maker, that's how the person that created that workshop is compensated. So I appreciate that. And I ended up using some of these samples from the book to showcase in the workshops what I was talking about. And it was really cool to have some of this stuff sort of giving back, because it was a lot of spinning, it was a lot of knitting, and to be able to just share that, you know, and be able to sort of pay it forward with being able to, you know, use some of this stuff in our teaching. So very cool. Love this yarn. Sarah Lamb uses what she calls ply and match. She just breaks off the excess when one single transitions to the next color before the other single. Yeah, so Julia Moreno talks about that in her Ply to Knit course on Blueprint as well, where you color match by, as you're plying, if you have sections of your singles that don't match 1 or 2 of the other singles, you just pull off those singles and discard them, and then match them up. When the colors match up again, you continue on plying. There's 2 things about that method that I'm not super keen on. The first one is that you're wasting a lot of singles. That kind of gets into like, what's your time worth? And, you know, do you want a yarn where the colors match up really beautifully? Or, this is my second sort of thing, I really like the yarns where it's sort of a little bit come what may and the colors do marl and heather a little bit. Because if you're spinning long enough repeats, like she mentions in here, where, you know, if she hadn't stripped it quite so much, the colors would have matched up more. You almost kind of need those areas of transition between the colors to help with the transition of color in knitting. Like, you know, if you go from one color and it just stops to the next color and it just starts, it looks like a really bad join. So even in dyed yarn that's self-striping, there's a little tiny bit of mixing of the colors between the two places where the colors mix. And those couple of stitches allow that color to transition naturally. So you maybe don't want miles, you know, a full row of that transition. So maybe you cut some of the yarn and manipulate it a little bit that way so that you don't end up with these massive areas of heathering and blending. But if you want that really, really clean transition, I would really encourage you to chain ply. All right. Also, a broken ply in the sock yarn doesn't sound like a great idea. Oh, Florence, you're talking about with chain ply sometimes. So there's this sort of this, a lot of people say that chain ply is not great for socks, because theoretically, if where the knot is when you create chain ply, theoretically, if one of those three singles that makes up chain plied yarn, because it's basically one single that makes all of the entire skein. Oh, no, breaking the ply to match it. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess if your joins aren't really super structurally sound, yeah, you can definitely have areas of the sock that could endure more wear in those areas. With chain ply, a lot of people feel that if one of those singles breaks near a knot or where the chain is created, that theoretically that whole part of the yarn could unravel. I've made several pairs of chain ply socks. I've never had that issue. There's also an attitude out there, or a concern, that walking on those knots in the chain ply might be uncomfortable on the soles of your feet. Again, I've never experienced that. So I would encourage you guys to do some sampling and to play around with it and see what you think. If you don't want to commit to chain plying an entire 4 ounces or an entire braid of fiber, you could always split it in half. Chain ply half, traditional 3-ply the other half, and then do like a striping where you do knit the toe and then you do maybe 4 rows of the chain ply, 4 rows of the traditional 3-ply, and so on up the sock. And over time you can judge the wear and tear of the two yarns. That's an idea. We've talked about that on the show before. All right, it is getting up there in time, and I do need to go get Nora. As much as I want to just sit here and talk to you guys, it's way more fun to sit here. But I do need to go and drive over to my parents' house, and there's tons of construction, which is why I would rather sit here, because I'm just going to sit in traffic. I think that's everything for today. We have a little bit of housekeeping that we need to cover before we say goodbye. So let me switch the cameras around, and we will continue on. I'm still not used to this quick transition. This is just crazy. April was sponsored by West Coast Color, which is my friend Lynn up in Tappan, British Columbia. We gifted away to Prairie Bird Fire, which is Sherry. We gifted her, I asked her to tell me which one she wanted, and I'm just going to grab the fiber. As I almost fall over. She chose the greens. So she wanted the greens and blues. So this is going to go to Sherry. I haven't mailed it out yet, Sherry. I'm going to go to the mailbox once. So this was on her Biffle base, Biffle and Soy. It's BFL Silk. And the second fiber is going to go to Tomatil, which is Kelly, post number 8. So this is going to go to Kelly. And I will get your address from you, Kelly, and I will pop that in the mail at the same time that I pop Sherry's in the mail. So thank you so much to Lynn for sponsoring the show. I really appreciate it. It was very, very kind, and I will get that in the mail before we leave in June. Yeah, the show really does fly by, doesn't it? It's just I could live stream for like 2 hours. I always have so much to share with you guys, and you guys have so much to share with me. So I find that like I'm looking at chat and you guys are sharing stuff. It's just so rich. Okay. I have some more to gift. The 2019 calendars, woolen spinning calendars, I have a bunch to give away. So in the breed and color studies threads, in the finished yarn or finished projects thread, you're allowed to post one post per person with one project. So if you just do yarn with that particular breed and color study, then you just post that yarn, and then for another breed and color study, new post. If you end up doing something with that yarn from the first post and you make a project, just edit your post and pop in with more colors or with more photos. It is a chatter-free thread. I have deleted some posts in there, but there are a few chattery type posts, but I've just left them for now. A few of them I deleted, but try to keep it chatter-free. So this is the finished thread for the breed and color studies. It's ongoing. It shows stuff all the way back from our very first breed and color study all the way up to our current one. Post number 43, which is Tamar, second Zephyr. I'm going to be sending you a calendar. So Tamar, if you could send me your address, that would be your mailing address, that would be amazing. And then the 51 yarn spin along chatter thread. So we only have one thread for our 51 yarn spin along. It's a spin along that's been going to be going for a full 2 years, and there's just been so much enthusiasm from the community in there. You guys have been sharing so much and learning so much from one another, and I can barely keep up. It's just amazing. I go in there and I read through everything, and I'm just bowled over at how much you guys are doing in there. So I wanted to honor that amount of work that you guys are doing. So post number 149, which is Megan, Likey Meg. I don't know if she's still in. Oh yeah, she's still in chat. I will be sending you a calendar. And also post number 398. There's over 700 posts in that thread so far. So these were the two that came up. Post number 149, Megan, and post number 398, which is Rebby J, which is my friend Rebecca. So you guys will all be getting calendars in the mail if you could just send me your mailing addresses. It's really exciting. This is just awesome. I love being able to give this stuff to you guys. Our 51 yarn spin along in May is devoted to all things true worsted and true woolen. So people have been sharing a lot about their true worsted and true woolen yarns. If you want to know more about what I worked on and learned through this month, you can have a look at the monthly teaching content that is for all patrons of the community. You guys all have access to that vlog every month. And as well, the Thoughtful Spinner talks about my choices that I made for those spins for this month. And so that's the Thoughtful Spinner tier on Patreon. As well, if you would like to support this show, if you're a small business owner, you can get in touch with me and I will send you some information. There's information on the blog about supporting the show from and having an ad on the podcast itself after the live stream is released out later in the week. And you can email me directly if you would like to know more. The newsletter for Woolen Spinning goes out on the 14th of every month, and you can subscribe to that. You do not need to be a patron for that. It's open to all members of our community. It just keeps you up to date on what's going on, what's coming up, and gives me a place to share everything in one place. So if you would like to join that, just go to wealthforpearls.com and there's a bar at the top that you can join. And I appreciate everybody who has joined thus far. It just gives me a forum to be able to share everything because there's so much that's going on. And I don't really want to waste podcast time with sharing all of the things that we're working on. So I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you watching. If you're a new viewer to the show, thank you so much for spending this time with me. If you're a returning viewer, thank you for your time week after week, month after month. I am able to do this because of you guys and particularly because of the patron community. So thank you so much. As always, happy spinning. I hope you're enjoying some sun wherever you are. And until next time, bye guys.